My grandfather's health deteriorated, so he was admitted to the hospital. I stayed with him in the hospital. It was nighttime, and my friend Lily was also with me in the hospital. She had come to meet me. We were talking and walking in the hospital corridor. As we kept walking, we reached a place that was at the very end of the hospital. There, the lights were very dim, and no one was coming or going. This place was completely deserted, empty like a wasteland. No doctor or patient was visible there. This place felt a bit strange to us, and we also started feeling a little cold. We weren't getting good vibes there. We stopped at that place, and in front of us, we saw a woman walking toward us. She looked a little strange and didn't seem normal to me. When she came near us, she said, "Don't go ahead. There's danger ahead. Don't go." Lily and I looked at each other with questioning eyes. After saying this, the woman walked away. We were still thinking about her words, and when we turned around to look back, the woman had disappeared. We thought she was just here. So where did she suddenly vanish? We were shocked. Where could she have gone in such a short time? Even if someone ran, they would still be visible ahead. But we were confused about where she went. We didn't pay much attention to her words and kept walking. We thought maybe she was a mental patient who said random things and left. These things only happen in movies and dramas, we thought. As we walked a bit further, we saw a room. When I peeked inside, I saw a stretcher with a dead body on it. Seeing this, I realized we were standing outside the mortuary. This realization scared us. While I was still looking inside, the body suddenly sat up. That body was badly burned and looked horrifying. Seeing this, I got very scared. I told my friend Lily, "Run." She asked me, "What happened?" I replied, "Nothing, just run. Let's get out of here." We ran until we reached the ward where my grandfather was admitted. We stopped outside the ward and sat on a bench. My friend asked me, "What did you see that made you run all the way here? Tell me something." When Lily asked, I told her I saw a burned body that sat up and stared at me. Seeing that, I got very scared. After hearing me, Lily said, "It might have been your imagination. That was the mortuary. Everyone there is dead. How can anyone be alive? You must have misunderstood. You watch too many horror movies, so maybe you have imagined it. There's no such thing in reality. Sit down, don't stress." Lily and I were sitting there when the same woman who had warned us in the corridor was standing in one of hospital's departments. Looking at me, seeing her, I thought in my mind, how did the woman know there was danger there? How did she know this hospital so well? While I was still thinking about this woman, a stretcher passed in front of us with a dead body on it. I was shocked to see that the body on the stretcher was of the same woman standing in front of us. Seeing this, I completely lost my senses. That woman was already dead. I'm from Oregon, just outside Portland. Back in my early 20s, I was going through one of the strangest periods of my life. I had just broken up with my girlfriend of 2 years, and I was feeling lost. Like I was wandering, trying to make sense of everything without realizing what I was looking for. My grandmother, who had always been deeply religious, went to church every Sunday. After my grandfather passed away, I started going with her. I didn't have any deep faith at the time, but I figured maybe it would help me ground myself. My grandfather had been a decorated veteran, someone everyone in the community respected. Losing him left a hole in my grandmother's life. But she never wavered in her faith. She was certain that he was in a better place, and that gave her so much comfort. I admired that strength, that peace she found in her faith. And secretly, I wanted to find something like that for myself. One Sunday after the service, something completely unexpected happened. I met Kaylee. She was new to the church, and that was strange, because our community was tight-knit and I knew everyone. She had dark curly hair, hazel eyes that seemed to look right through me, and there was something magnetic about her. I couldn't resist walking up to her. We started talking, and it felt like we'd known each other forever. It was one of those rare moments where you just click with someone instantly. I found myself drawn to her quiet mystery, her sense of charm that was impossible to ignore. I tried to get to know her better, asking about her life and family, but she kept dodging the questions, laughing and saying I'd have to take her on a date if I wanted those answers, and honestly, I didn't mind. Her playful teasing made me like her even more. After a bit, she finally told me her family had just moved to the area. Her stepfather was a horrible alcoholic who mistreated both Kaylee and her mother. She didn't go into too much detail, but it was clear that her past had been full of pain. I was curious, but I didn't want to push her too hard. I just felt lucky that she was opening up to me. After our conversation, I asked her out for a date. She smiled and agreed without hesitation, and we made plans for later that week. Our date was simple, a movie and dinner, nothing fancy, just a way for us to talk more and get to know each other. The night went really well. She was a great listener, and it felt like she was genuinely interested in me, which was rare and refreshing. I didn't want the night to end, so after dinner, I suggested we take a drive. I thought it would give us a chance to continue talking in peace, away from the noise of the restaurant. We drove through a quiet, winding road on the outskirts of town. It was peaceful, the perfect kind of night, but then, out of nowhere, things took a turn that I'll never forget. She suddenly started speaking in a language I didn't recognize. It was fast, mumbled almost like French, but not quite. At first, I thought she was joking, but then I looked at her eyes. Her pupil had completely disappeared, and all I could see was the white of her eyes. My heart stopped. She was in some kind of trance, or having a seizure. I didn't know what was happening. I started the car, nearly crashing into the barrier. Panic hit me like a wave. I pulled over to the shoulder, shaking, and called an ambulance. I didn't know what to say except that I thought she was having a seizure. I kept looking at her, checking if she was okay, but she didn't seem aware of anything. Her head was vibrating, and I was paralyzed with fear, unsure what to do. I didn't want to touch her, but I felt like I should do something. I had never been more terrified in my life. Then just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Her head snapped back to look at me. Her eyes were returning to normal. She blinked a few times and gave me this wild, unblinking stare. I'll never forget that look. Before I could say anything, she threw open the car door and ran, full speed, into the woods. I was in shock. I couldn't process what had just happened. I just sat there, my head spinning, hands trembling. The police and paramedics arrived soon after. I told them everything, even though I knew how crazy it sounded. I told them about her eyes, the strange language, and how she just sprinted off into the woods. They took my statement seriously enough and promised they'd try to find her, but they never did. I looked for her at church the next Sunday, but she never showed up. Her Instagram was deleted, and I couldn't get through to her on her number. She had blocked me. Even when I had a friend text her number, it was gone. No one at the church knew who she was, and after that, she vanished completely. I never saw her again, and I don't know what happened that night. The memories of her and that strange encounter still haunt me. To this day, I'm left with the one burning question. Who was Kaylee? And what in the world happened to her?